The views and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the hosts and guests, and not necessarily those of the staff and management of WWDB TV.
Hey everybody, thanks for coming back to Doing It with Stiles. I've got a very special guest today, and my special guest is Wendy Rush. Wendy, thank you for coming and joining us here on Doing It with Stiles.
My pleasure, thanks for having me.
Now, Wendy's an amazing woman. She's got a lot of things going on in her career and in her life, but today we're going to focus on one of the things that's really important. You are the founder and director of a new organization called IMPROV for Life.
Correct.
What exactly is IMPROV for Life?
Well, a little exposition. I had the pleasure of studying improv with Second City when they were here.
Oh, no kidding.
About 10 years ago. And I was taken just away with how scary it was and how empowering it was to overcome the fear of getting in front of people and making up things on the spot without a script. And I continued my studies after Second City left and Improv Vegas took over, and never looked away. Did a show on the Strip for a while. When I was doing the show on the Strip, I was realizing that every show that we were doing had some sort of subconscious subject matter that I was bringing up on stage that I was dealing with outside the theater in my real life, my relationships, my work, and I thought, this is such a great form of self-improvement.
Yeah.
I'm really figuring out this problem.
Awesome therapy.
Right, it really is.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I thought. And then I put it on the back burner for a while, and I applied my newfound fearlessness that I learned from improv to the professional world. Ended up being on one of the top-rated radio stations in Las Vegas, and
that would be KKLZ from 10 to 3, right?
Yes, 96.3 KKLZ, and found my way into the music world in a band as well, and I'm sure we'll talk about that later. But it'd been about 5 or 6 years since I'd done any improv, and a listener of mine called, and he was a transplant here from Philadelphia and was talking about working with the specialty court system. Now, the specialty court system is a newly implemented subcategorization, I suppose, of the court system here in Las Vegas. And the court system has primarily been for the use of, you punish the offender, send them back out on probation, they come back in, you punish them again, you send them back out. Well, the specialty courts are amazing because they are problem-solving courts. So instead of just the recurring punishment and recurring offense cycle that they were in, now with Judge Kearns presiding over these, it's now the goal is, let's figure out why these people keep breaking the rules. Let's figure out why they keep getting in trouble. Let's get to the cause of that so that we can fix it from the inside out. So I was talking to my listener, Tom McCourt, who is now my partner in this this project, and he said, your passion for improv as a form of therapy would be so greatly applied in this new specialty court endeavor that's happening in Las Vegas. So, long story short, Improv for Life uses the principles taught in improv comedy as a form of therapy, as a form of self-improvement, to teach life skills and coping mechanisms to those who are at risk, is what they're called, who are recurring offenders in the specialty court system.
So are these first-time offenders or multiple offenders, or does it matter? Is that even really an issue?
It can be either. It's primarily repeat offenders.
Okay.
In fact, the court system here, we're working right now, the first courts that we hope to be applying these workshops for is the youth offenders, which are the 1924s. It's called Yo Court. And then we have the juvenile courts, which is 18 and below. And these kids are on a cycle. I believe it's a year-long cycle of they're constantly monitored and to see how their behavior is improving, and then they graduate or they come back. So those are repeat offenders, and those are the ones that we're going to be working with.
Are you familiar with Trial by Peers?
I am not familiar with Trial by Peers.
Trial by Peers is a local group that works with the courts as well for juvenile offenders, and it's a diversion program that they basically go to a court that is a jury of their peers, which is other youths. and there's a number of attorneys in town that that are there, and the kids go through the program. They are judged and sentenced by their peers to, and not any kind of jail time, but community service or whatever the jury feels that would be most appropriate for that particular individual. So it sounds to me like at some point in time there might be a nice tie-in here for you and for them if there is another option for, instead of okay, you're going to go to detention and
Right.
that kind of thing. But if there is a program out there, and I really when I first saw you posted this, it's maybe a week now? Has it been a week?
My Facebook page?
Yeah.
Well, we've been working on the curriculum for the project. We got our status a year ago, but we're starting to do the social media and the websites now. So
Right.
yes,
I mean,
that was
I
about a
just
week
saw
ago.
this, and it was just like, it kind of grabbed me, and I thought, I got to find out about this. I need to.
Then I'm doing it right.
Yes, you are.
So thank you.
And it's any of these programs will not work unless people know about them and support them. And that's one of the things that we ask you guys. The guests that we've had on the show, and you've been really great about kicking in and help supporting these endeavors. So I encourage you to find Wendy Rush's page, and it's Improv for Life. On Facebook.
On Facebook, it's Improv for Life LV.
LV, okay. All right.
On a website, it's improvforlife.org.
Right, but there is a link on your Facebook page to your website.
And vice versa.
Right, and vice versa. So go check it out, and if you know somebody or know somebody who knows somebody, might be helped by this. So you kind of told us what. This is a local program, right? This is just right here in Vegas right now?
For now. However,
Okay.
we've gotten amazing support nationwide. I just had a wonderful therapist by the name of Margot Escott. She is based out of Florida.
I saw that, yeah.
And she came out here to do the U.S. Journal conference and taught an improv course for recovery. Improv in the last 5 to 10 years has really gotten a lot of attention in the mental health field. It's being used for PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder,
Right.
anxiety. It's being used, Margot's doing amazing things. She's using it with Parkinson's
Wow.
patients. She's using it for autism. So it's really, like I said, there's not an application that I haven't found it useful
I have a whole
for.
list of contacts to give you now.
Right, honestly.
Friends of Parkinson's, I deal with them a lot, and anyway, so yeah, we'll talk about that later. But,
Well, I always say if I meet someone and they're struggling with something, I say, there's an improv game for that, because there's always an improv game for everything.
and we talked about this a little bit before the show started, is I think that one of the things that is valuable about this is that improv is something that we all do every day of our life without realizing it. We are improvising, and especially here in the studio, we've had to do that a number of times. Well, this doesn't work, so that now we've got to improvise. We got to figure something else out. And I think that's basically the bottom line of what you're trying to teach these young people or these at-risk individuals is that you're doing it with the humor and the improv, but basically aren't you just trying to say, here's another way to get on with your life?
Essentially, yes. I'm the mother of a 2-year-old, so
Right.
parents will know this phrase. It's redirecting.
That's
Instead
it.
of just
Thank you.
disciplining,
That's the word I was looking
you're
for.
redirecting. You're
Right.
giving these kids coping skills, and not just in. Not a lot of people are doing this sort of thing in their life, but improv teaches to adjust to change. How
Right.
many people are struggling because they can't accept change? The codependency curriculum I'm writing is a lot of games to give people or challenge people to let go of control, relinquish control, and support others, and that helps in relationships, listening skills. It helps in business. It helps in your family dynamic. It teaches self-esteem. It teaches, one of the big things that helped for me was it taught me to take healthy risks. And so many people fear failure so much that they live to not even half of their life's potential because they live in this safe little box.
Yes.
Well, anyone who-
Safety sucks.
Safety does suck, and growth happens outside the comfort
But don't try
zone.
that at home.
Hashtag safety sucks. We're going to start that on social media. Growth lives in the outside the comfort comfort zone. So
Right.
we have to get out of the comfort zone to grow, and improv gives a safe environment for people to try to react to situations outside of their norm in a safe environment to do that.
And you're using, if I understand this correctly, improv with humor.
Yes,
I mean, that's there is a humor component to it that you're using as part of the program, right?
yes. Well, psychodrama and drama therapy are two forms of group therapy that
Right.
have been used, and those are role-playing games
Exactly.
and improvisation. The thing that makes some people call it comedic improv therapy. Some people call it applied improvisation. It focuses on the humor aspect,
Right.
which humor in itself has shown to have mental health benefits and lowered stress levels. And drama therapy and psychodrama, there's not a lot of therapists' office in marriage counseling that you wouldn't eventually try some sort of role playing.
Right.
But it's always, it's not with a negative connotation. It's just, it's not humorous.
Right.
And that's what sets us apart, is that it focuses on the humor. So many people don't even realize that they're getting therapy because they're having fun and
Right.
they're playing games. And this idea actually came from, I had the opportunity to teach 8 to 11-year-olds improv classes just for drama, just for an extracurricular activity. And it was a 6-week course, and it was just fun, but I started to notice that I had certain kids that struggled with certain things in the scene work. And I had one who was a little girl she was an only child. Mom was a single mom, so she was used to getting what she wanted.
Right.
She had a hard time with control.
Yeah.
So anytime she was in a scene where she had to accept someone else's suggestion, she said no, killed the scene, audience left, we lost a lot of money. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
It wasn't in front of an audience. But so I put her in the games to challenge her to be more supportive of other people's ideas. And how many times do you have that guy at work who just doesn't want to share ideas? He's a micromanager. These games help with things like that. A lot of people think improv is, first of all, they think it's stand-up comedy.
Right.
Totally different things. Secondly, like I said on the post, people ask me, well, if you're going to teach people to be funny, how is that going to help them in their lives? That's not what improv is. It teaches any
Kept me alive for 70 years.
It's true. I've gotten away with a lot because I can make a joke out of it. That's true. You made me lose my train of thought.
I'm sorry.
No, now you have to fill in. No,
Okay.
it's an improv scene. Now you have to take over.
Okay, fine. You have mentioned the word games a number of times. So is there a I'm putting you in the position of the therapist. You are the therapist, or whoever is the therapist. Do you have a set script, if you want to call it, that we have this game, this game, this game, this game, or are you improvising as well
That's a very
with each one of the individuals?
That's a good question. The curriculum that I've started to write is friendly both to therapists who know nothing about improv and
Right.
improvisers who know nothing about therapy. Ideally, you will have one of each professional in every workshop that happens. I have the luxury of having a court-appointed psychologist that I will hopefully be working with, and she will oversee these. But to answer your question, I've written a curriculum that there's an acronym. It's BLAST, Improv, B-L-A-S-T. The B is games that build trust. The L is listening and awareness. The A is acceptance and support. The S is self-discovery, and the T is taking risks. So I have put the games in each one of these categories to help
Gotcha.
the facilitator know which games to use. If they see that someone's struggling with coping skills, that goes in the S games, and they'll just pull one of those games. So yes and no. There is a structure, but it's not pre-scripted because you have to be able to improvise according to what the people in your workshop
Right.
need, the
But
participants need.
okay, so the therapist or the counselor or whatever is maybe given an outline. Okay, or and I'm assuming a lot here because I really don't know yet, but are there trained people in this concept yet, or have you reached that point, or is it just you and are you that new? I
Hard
guess?
to say. Well, there are psychologists all over the country and all over the world who have noticed the benefits of improv, who are starting to use improv in their private practices.
Okay.
There are improvisers out of Second City in Chicago and other improv schools who are noticing the psychological applications for improv, who are starting to do that. We are the first to do something like this in the
Okay.
specialty court system. So we don't have someone who is trained for at-risk improv because we're doing it for the first time.
So you have a court-appointed psychologist that you're going to be working with. So I'm assuming that there's going to be a period of training, or is she just going to oversee this program?
I see.
Or is she going to be an active part of the therapy?
In the beginning, she would just oversee.
Okay.
Now, the nonprofit Improv for Life has a board of advisors who
Okay.
are all professionals in the mental health
Gotcha.
industry, so that we can turn to them and say, we are struggling with this. What do you suggest? And
Gotcha.
I have, and that is
So
primarily.
you have resources that you can pull from if something isn't working the way that you had hoped, or
Right.
yeah. So which is one of the things that I like about this concept, is that you're not locked into this is the way things are done.
Which would be anti-improv.
I was just going to say, how could you?
You must not improv my improv.
Yes, that's right.
Oh, yes.
So, because each individual or each therapist is going to have, you can have one at-risk individual, or one individual goes to 3 different therapists and is going to have 3 different experiences. So each therapist is going to bring to the table their own baggage, if you will, to this program. And the 3 of them may not approach the same individual the same way, but that's okay, right?
Yes, well, we will definitely be mindful of respecting the school of thought with these therapists, and especially with the court system. And we will not implement anything that hasn't already been pre-approved.
Right. Yeah. No. And I'm sure of that. And I was going to say that this is going to make it more difficult for you, being working with a court-appointed therapist, having to follow the rules of the court in certain, so that kind of restricts you within a certain parameters that you have to work within to get this improv to work.
Yes and no. If I were going in there just to do an improv show for the sake of comedy and an audience, then yes, those obstacles would definitely be a hindrance. However, I am looking at it as I'm getting free training in how do I make this curriculum, because I'm writing it as it's happening, and this is all going to be very research-based. We're going to collect data over the next year and fine-tune it before we send it out into the country and
Gotcha.
implement it in other court systems.
So you're basically kind of doing this as a test case to kind of help develop the final product.
Right.
Okay.
So, and for that reason, I'm very grateful to have.
No, and I do understand that, but I'm just saying that they're if you are not, you're under the scrutiny of the court. There are things that the court can do, and there are things that the court can't do. If you are not under that scrutiny, you have a little more freedom to do something that might be beneficial for that particular individual.
Yes.
So it's kind of a catch-22. It's a good thing, and I understand that, and I agree with you that it'll be helpful in developing this. But once you develop it and you get outside, if the court is saying, okay, here is a diversion program that we're going to send you to, speaking of the individual, and then once they get there, it's your job to turn that around, and you're not going to have somebody breathing down your neck and looking over your shoulder all the time.
True. We eventually want to take this outside to, I would love to work with women who have come from domestic violence situations. I would love to work with kids in the school system. When it comes to doing the court version of this, if you will, I am at the mercy of the court, because I am there I'm there to benefit the court.
Of course.
So we're going to do it their way.
Right. And you have to, but that's going to, I think that's going to end up making you more powerful in the end.
I think so as well. And I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm
No.
grateful for having improv training, because I will be able to, I
Yep.
will do it your way.
Yep.
And this is how we're going to do it.
Yeah.
And that goes right back to improv. It teaches you to accept change. So I'm excited about it. There's going to be some hurdles, but it's going to be a lot more efficient in writing this curriculum that's going to eventually help so many people. Be a lot more efficient to do it with this help than without.
Oh yeah, no, I get that,
Mm-hmm.
and my list that I'm going to give you keeps growing longer and longer.
You need longer paper.
I have there's some contacts that I've been working with on the domestic violence kind of side of things, and I mean there's some groups in town, Shade Tree and you know, Women's Shelter and stuff, but they're limited to what they can do. So this group that I've been talking with is looking for how do we get beyond that, and I mean I'm sure that you're aware of some of the things. Well, I'm not sure, but you should be aware of some of the things that you know young women are facing in domestic abuse situations, and the whole mental state that they are in, that this could be extremely beneficial.
Oh, absolutely. That was
You know.
one of the first applications that I envisioned when we talked about starting this.
Okay.
If nothing else, improv teaches you self-esteem and empowerment.
Exactly.
Those two things go a long way in that
Yeah.
situation.
Even if you're initially just pretending.
Yeah. And oftentimes you do have to fake
Yeah.
it till you make it.
That's exactly right. If you fake
true.
it to make it. So, gee, this is absolutely fascinating. And you had mentioned Judge Kearns is the one who's going to be overseeing this. Are you going to be working with him, or how is that working?
Hopefully, Judge Kearns, I had lunch with him shortly after we came up with this concept, and we had just gotten our EIN. I hadn't put pen to paper yet in terms of writing the curriculum, but having taught these children, I have curricula that are just games to teach you listening skills, games, you know, the very remedial elementary
Right.
version of this. So I brought this to Judge Kearns, and with the research that I'd done that said, look, it helps with stress, and I've got this from the Journal of Medicine, and he said, put your book down. I'm already in. I love improv, and I love the idea of this. However, I'm going to throw you a curveball. I don't want you to use this on my youth offenders in the court system, the 17 to 24 year olds. I want you to work with the parents. And he said it's really frustrating when these kids go back to, when they do all this progress, make all this progress in the court system, and then they go back to homes that enable their behavior.
Exactly.
So for the last year, I have been researching the heck out of and writing a curriculum using improv to combat codependency. And that has been fascinating. That's how I got in touch with a lot of professionals in the mental health field that are using it for addiction recovery. And there's a lot of parallels in a lot of these applications with improv that I didn't even expect.
Right.
So the codependency one has been very challenging, but very, very rewarding. And we've just finally started to polish that one up. And so I'm really excited to work with that one.
So, are there any studies out there? I mean, you said that this is being used kind of throughout the U.S. Are there any statistics that you have found helpful that people are saying, well, this kind of and it's hard to say that this particular improv works, but you know, it's like we've had success with this type of
Yes.
therapy.
Well, when I first noticed the parallels 10 years ago, I tried to tell everyone, this is so great. And the people in the improv world looked at me like I had three heads. And that's part of why it went on the back burner. But because professionals...
Well, because we all know that comedians are really screwed up.
We're just telling jokes. And I didn't know anyone in the psychology field, so I couldn't go and talk to any of them. So I'm so grateful that the research is being done, because now I'm just like, look, that's what I've been saying.
There you
And now
go.
someone who has credentials is actually backing me up. So to answer your question, yes, there's the Frontiers in Psychology, Dr. Gordon Vermont it was 5 years ago, released an article about the benefits of improv and the parallels between improv and applied psychology. There are studies showing that it's been used successfully with post-traumatic stress disorder, which the Veterans Court here in Las Vegas, I'm so excited to use that application there. And there's an applied improv website from people in all walks of life who are realizing where the roads can cross. So to answer your question, yes, there has been a lot of research. I have a notebook full of papers that highlighted that.
What do you do in your spare time?
I know, right? I have so much of it. I juggle. Well, I'm juggling.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. You do. Have you used this, or have you used it yourself? Have you? I mean, one of the hardest things for a therapist is getting their own life together.
Right. Well, you can't call me a therapist legally.
No, and
Disclaimer.
I'm just using
Right.
using that as a catch-all.
I just want to make sure the therapist.
Yes, whether it's a life
upset.
coach or a counselor or a therapist
Yes.
or a bartender.
You are absolutely right. It's the hardest. Well, therapist or not, it's the hardest to see our own issues, and a lot easier to see it from the outside. So, have I used it? The thing that I've probably used the most consciously, I think when you study improv, you subconsciously start implementing
Right.
the things you learn. But consciously, I've made a conscious choice on the risk taking. Getting into radio, I didn't even know what a soundboard was, and my degree is in theater set design.
Oh, cool.
I build stuff. So when
We need to talk. Yeah.
okay, right. Let me see. Let's help over here. So
We have a show coming up that we may need some help with.
I will grab my power tools and dust them off. So I was in the interior design world when the recession hit, and when our studio shut down, I got really bummed, and I kind of was just like, I'm going to try something else. And I had been studying improv, and I thought, well, if I can get up on an improv stage in front of an audience of people and make a fool out of myself, and swear that I was never going to show my face in that place again, and then 24 hours later walk back in, I can walk into a radio station and say, hey, I have no idea what these things are, but I want a job.
That's cool.
I did. And the gentleman who was the program director at the time, he said, let's air check you. So I did an air check, and I brought it to him. Air check meaning see how I sound on the air,
yeah.
for people who don't know what air check is. And I took it to him, and he said, you suck. However, I like your enthusiasm. So follow our jocks around if they let you for a month.
Right.
Learn on your own dime. Come back. Let's do another air check. So I did. I begged people who'd never seen me before to let me follow them around. Again, another thing that I had to face the fear of rejection in doing that. And I did another air check. And a month later, brought it back to the program director, and he said, you still suck. But you have a work ethic that I've never seen before. I can teach you everything else. So I had to overcome.
Is that Larry?
No, actually, that was at CBS, which is now Intercom. It was Mix 94.1 was my first station. That sounds like something Larry would do, huh?
Yeah, no, it does.
Larry wouldn't say that. And I worked there as a weekender for a couple of years before I found my home at KKLZ. But so the risk taking also, I've been in choir since I was 17 because I was always afraid to stand out in front.
Gotcha.
It's very safe to have other voices over here.
And now you're a lead singer.
And now, exactly, because the first time I walked up into an audition at the Quad, which was the Imperial Palace then,
Right.
and then the Quad, now it's the Link.
Right.
They had dealer-tainers who were, do you remember them?
Yeah.
They were celebrity look-alike dealers.
Yep.
So I walked in, again, faced my fear of being laughed off the stage, and I auditioned to be Alanis Morissette, and I got hired on the spot.
Cool.
And then I did it again when I auditioned to be in the band, and it was just healthy risk-taking. If nothing else, improv teaches you to not fear your failure.
Yeah.
It's just, it makes you fearless. Can you imagine
Yes, I
the
can.
application for that in real life?
And we have similar stories because I've basically been in construction my whole life. And when everything took a dump here, and I thought, okay, it's time to retire, but I can't retire. I got to do something else. And so here I am now. I mean, I got into this, and I had some friends. I don't know if you're familiar with anyone over at the Point. Rick and Jackie Gould. Mm-hmm. Oh, you know them?
No, well, I mean,
We
all know
they are.
of each other.
Yeah. About 10 years ago, I kind of became friends with them, and Rick invited me in the studio one time. And when I was a kid going to high school, I went to Hollywood High School. And right down the street from there was the Don Martin School of Broadcasting. So all of these guys that were going to broadcasting school, my mom owned a little restaurant there, and they used to come in there for lunch and dinner and stuff. So that's always kind of been in my blood, but I never had the guts to do it. And when Rick asked me, come on in the studio and let me read some stuff on the air, and kind of when Jackie would go on vacation, he'd have me come in and fill in, and I kind of got the bug, and then I started over at KLAV. I actually was doing videos as a hobby, and somebody called me and says, hey, there's a talk show over at KLAV, and they want somebody to film the show and put it up on YouTube. I thought, oh, that's a cool idea. Yeah. So I went over there, met with him, and started doing it. And a couple months later, there was another show that said, hey, that's kind of cool. I want to do that. And that's when it popped in my head, this is a thing. This is something that I think could really be. And so we started this, and we've grown from a little I mean, you know how big your studio is. Okay, we've grown from starting there into something a little bigger into what we have here now, and I have never been happier. I mean, it's exciting, and we've had to improvise along the way. You know, my partner and I, since we got over here and started this, we've just been drunk on power. You know, I mean, it's just it's not
You're
a job.
megalomaniacs now.
I get to I get to do what I'm doing right now. And it's such, I get to meet such awesome people and help them do what they want to do. And so yeah, it's cool, and you can't be afraid of, you have to fail. You know, Babe Ruth was also the strikeout king, struck out more than anybody else because every time he got up there, he took a swing.
Right.
And you have to do that, and you can't be afraid to fail, and I love that. And so, you know, I think that what you're doing here, I think is phenomenal. I really see, I mean, you know, you're living it, so you've already got it in your head, and you know what's going to happen with that.
Well, and I love that you said that little by little you grew to where you are now, because the cool thing about
It doesn't happen overnight.
well, no, and a cool thing about improv is that it really instills in you this this mentality of if this, then what?
Right.
Like if I can do this that I thought I couldn't do, what else can I do?
Yeah.
And so many people, and I believe this is to be true, they act out of one of two things: love or fear.
Yes.
And it breaks my heart. I'm going to try not to get choked up, but it breaks my heart to see people who are living their lives in fear. It's so, I just want to, I without divulging
And you
too much.
can't do that
I
without
can't-
getting arrested. I know.
I learned that the hard way. No, I didn't. And I came from a background, without divulging too much of my personal information, that really taught me to fear my failure, that I was not lovable or acceptable unless I was perfect. And I took that with me all the way until I started to take these improv classes. Now, was it just improv? No. I was in therapy, which is where my inclination toward psychology comes
Right.
from. I was a bartender in Las Vegas. That's going to make you open up your, get out of your shell just for the sake of getting paid, and you have to talk to people. But improv, it challenged that, and it wasn't easy. It's not like you're going to walk into an improv class and suddenly you're healed. You have to constantly be making active choices.
Well, and the fact that you came back every time, and I've done stand up a couple of times, and it would scare the crap out of me, but I'd do it again in a heartbeat. I mean, it's not something that I would like to do for a living, but it's something that if the opportunity arose, yeah, I'd love to do it. It'd be cool, you know.
Well, and I love that you said that, because I think improv combined with the desire and the active choice to keep facing your fear, because you're not going to do it once and all of a sudden you don't fear anything.
Yes.
You have to feel the fear and do it anyway, if I'm going to quote the Susan Jeffers book. You have to constantly be doing that. And another thing that I was talking to about with a friend of mine, the yes and principle of improv. It's one of the first rules of improv is in the context of the scene, you always yes and your partner. You say, yes, I accept your suggestion that I am your pet dog, and I am going to actively act this out, and here's my food dish, you know. And it makes for a fun scene to watch for an audience. Sure, that's why it's comedy. However, if you take that yes and application, principle, and apply it to your real life, I mean, there was a Jim Carrey movie about it. It's called The Yes Man. Yes Man.
Yeah.
And he took healthy risks, and he met the love of his life.
Yeah.
You know, he got the promotion because he stopped fearing saying yes to opportunities.
And I think fear is the biggest thing that holds us back from experiencing life.
I'm underlining that 3 times. It's so true.
Yeah.
And it's so hard in theory to overcome, and so easy once you take the first step. And improv gives you a safe environment to do that.
Well, it's I mean, think about your job, your day job. You go into a little room and you talk to thousands and thousands of people who aren't there.
Hundreds of thousands.
Well, I mean, who are there, but you can't see them. You don't know if anybody's listening, and you know, but you know what I mean.
Well, I didn't think about that before. Thanks a lot.
You have a lot of listeners out there. I can tell you
I
that.
do.
And because I still listen, so.
Thank you.
But it's you're improving. I mean, you do have a playlist. You got to play this and this and this and this, but you still have that freedom within those parameters to do it the way you want to do it. And when you come back in between, a set, you may or may not know what you're going to say until the mic goes on, and
Quite often. Or 2 seconds after the mic goes on, you hear
there's
silence.
I used to watch it maybe a little before your time, but WKRP in Cincinnati.
Thank you for thinking I'm that young.
I love that show, and one of my favorite scenes was Johnny Fever, and it was in the opening credits in the control booth, and the music's playing, and he's just going
I do
like
that.
And I have seen too many people behind the mic doing that. And we do it here because we play music when we don't have a show going on, and it's just like, man, we're cranking it up and just rocking out, and there's a freedom there that you are, in a sense, taking it back to your improvising. Every song is different, and how you dance to it or how you react to it is different, and so you're anyway. So I love the concept. I think it's phenomenal. I do honestly, sincerely have a number of people. I'm going to have to put a list together and get it to you.
That need the courses or that can help?
That can help, and yeah, I know hundreds of thousands of people that need the course, and I think that you never, if you have ever gone through any kind of therapy, you never, if you're honest with yourself, you are never done. Whether you're seeing someone actively, I mean a therapist, or it's just you looking in the mirror in the mornings. And so it's something that is a part of growth, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's if you stop growing, you stagnate, and then you croak out. So
Exactly. And therapy, I agree that so many people, there's such a negative stigma that comes with therapy that people are like, I'm not broken, I don't need a therapist. You don't need to be broken, you just need to have a desire to evolve.
Right.
And I'm not saying you couldn't evolve without one, but man, what a useful tool to do it quicker. Right?
It without divulging too much personal information, it took me 40 years before I was diagnosed with PTSD. I was a Vietnam vet. And all of those years, I thought I was just an asshole.
Well, that's what we all thought too.
And a lot of people told me that. So, so I'd be interested in how because I did go through the BA program, and it did open my eyes a lot, and it never really goes away. But you learn how to deal with it, and you learn what your triggers are and all that stuff. So I'd be interested in how the improv approaches that, I mean, as an active participant. So
I will definitely reach out when we start doing the Veterans Court.
Cool.
I've focused all my attention on the codependency, so I've unfortunately not done too much research. But I know that any humor-based therapy in itself is going to help with the stress levels.
And that's basically how I coped over the years. Is if it hadn't been for my sense of humor, I probably would have killed myself or somebody else. And so, to me, that's a very important and personal something that I've overcome. And I know when, it's time to make a joke.
Right. Defense mechanism.
Don't pick up a gun, go make a joke. Right. And I know that's kind of sensitive right now. And the other thing here's the other thing that really grabbed me about what you're doing is that you are at the moment focusing on the younger people.
I love where you're going with this.
I have not been so proud of America's youth today since the 60s. And that is where the upcoming generation is the one who creates changes in our society and kicks us in the ass and says, hey guys, you're screwing it up for us. And so I am so jazzed to see these kids today that are out there, and you can say all you want about, you've seen the don't walk out, walk up. Do both.
Yes.
There's and that's the other thing that I would love to see change in this country is it's not either or. You see the veterans before immigrants. We can do both.
We did become this polarized thinking society. I don't know why.
And we have to stop that. We got to figure out a way to stop that. It's not an either or. It's we're all in this together. And damn it, we better do something about it. So,
well, and I agree.
Sorry.
And it sounds so far-fetched from people, or to people who don't understand what improv is and why it can help with psychology. But it's not that far off of a possibility. The yes and principle of improv that you learn, the group cohesiveness, it all teaches to support other people's ideas. It teaches you to tolerate people who don't agree with you on things. It teaches coping skills when you're being bullied. It's the applications for, especially now in the youth. I have an almost 3-year-old. It terrifies me, the thought of putting her in the school system.
Oh, man.
Terrifies me to the point where I'm going to give up radio and be a stay-at-home mom, and teach her from home. But I'm not going to do that.
That's absolutely the wrong thing to do.
I know.
Because then you're teaching her to be antisocial.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm giving into my fear.
And absolutely right. And when my boys were growing up, and I thought the same thing. That's it, man. Homeschool. And I realized, wait a minute. I am taking away from them, with all the bullshit that I put up with going through school, and the joy and the fun. Man, I wouldn't trade that for anything, and I did not want to take that away from them, because that's how we learn life skills, is by dealing with each other and being in a group and learning how to, work with each other. So.
And I want to make sure that I don't want to say that if you choose to homeschool your children,
you
are wrong. There are so many extracurricular activities to teach social skills, and it's not a choice that I'm going to make. But my point is that I started to fear so much what is happening in the school system, and I can't even imagine the fear that these kids are going through being in
today,
school and having to go through. I had to go through earthquake drills from California, not active shooter drills, and
I went through nuclear missile drills.
You were chiseling on your
in
class, your homework.
We had the clay tablets, and
it would be, my life's work would be complete if I intervened with just one kid who wasn't being heard, who was being bullied, who didn't get the coping skills from parents who babysat them with technology, or whatever the reasons are that these kids are struggling the way they are. I would love to intervene with that one child who just needs to be healed and needs to be loved and needs to be understood and heard before he goes to pick up a weapon.
Right.
That would be my life's work done.
And we all say that. If I could just affect one child or one person or make one person laugh, I think that what we miss there is that you are not just affecting that one person. Because if you come into the studio and you've had a good experience and you walk out and you feel good about yourself and you're walking down the street and you're going to be smiling and somebody's going to see you smiling and they're going to smile, or you're going to wave to somebody, or you're going to say something nice to somebody, and that is infectious and contagious. And the more of that we can do, we got to be better off.
Yes, and on top of that, if someone comes into a room and you're already tense and you're anxious and you're full of strangers, and this person comes in and does something completely ridiculous and makes a fool out of themselves, there are some people who would judge and just, but there are the people who...
Those are the people I want to meet.
But they're almost, it's like you're giving the rest of the room permission to be human.
Yes.
Look, I'm going to make a fool out of myself. Come and make a fool out of yourself with me. Let's just laugh at each other and laugh at ourselves. How much is that going to affect the people around you? There's so many people who are introverted because studies have shown that we're more afraid of social death than we are of physical death. So we will go to so many extremes to pretend to be something we're not. So we're not a social pariah. There's actually a name for it. I'm gonna say it wrong. Gelatophobia sounds like fear of an Italian ice cream, but it's a fear of being rejected and laughed at. It's a real thing. It's spelled gelatophobia.
Okay, it's weird. I love it. I gotta look it up now. See?
And it's just so. I want to shake people and just be like, you do stupid things.
Yeah.
I know you do, because you're human. I do stupid things. Stop pretending not to.
Let me give you a personal story. This was a long, long time ago. And I had just gotten a new job as a director of construction for a company up in the Bay Area. And it was my first day on the job. And we were in those corporate buildings where, I had an office, but the wall was glass and the door was glass and all of that. And so I got up from my desk and I walked out to the admin person that was working outside my office, had a bunch of papers for me to start reviewing and, for some of the jobs that we were doing. So picked it up, turned around, walked smack dab into a wall. I'm bleeding all over. My nose is bleeding like crazy. And there's about 20 people standing around in the office, and they're all looking at me. I just made a complete fool of myself. These people all work for me. They're some of my subordinates. And I just kind of looked around the room and I said, go ahead and laugh. I would.
Oh my gosh.
And that was it. They all broke down. They all cracked up, and that kind of broke the ice, where it could have been a really bad situation where, that's a dumbass that walked into the wall, but they all did cracked up. I mean, HR insisted I still go to the hospital, but but it was like you take those situations and it was a way of making those people feel more comfortable because you don't know what to do, and by allowing them to laugh or allowing them to, experience whatever it was they were going to experience.
Just the power of being accepted even though you're flawed. I mean, again, if you're pretending you're perfect, why? We all know you're full of crap if you're pretending to be perfect.
This is not a dating site, it's real life.
And with social media where we can completely highlight our lives and make it look far more interesting and exciting than it is.
My page is really dull.
According to Facebook, I have a very exciting life, but I go home and watch Wheel of Fortune with my 2-year-old, so that's my real life. But it's just, gosh, we've gotten to this place where we all have to put on a mask and pretend to just pretend so much. And it's just, I love improv because, again, it's a room full of trust and people who are there to support you and to celebrate your failures with you and to encourage you to, take risks.
I think it was 3M, and this was back in the late 60s, maybe early 70s. 3M had a program where every year they celebrated the biggest failure in the company.
Well, that's interesting.
and I mean, they also celebrated their successes, but they also celebrated the biggest failure. And the person or department or whatever who had that biggest failure in that particular year, they got all kinds of awards, and they got, cash bonus and all of this stuff. And they had these big ceremonies, and they would shoot off a cannon because they were trying to get people to, get out there and think outside the box and experience, and don't be afraid to fail, because those failures teaches you things. Okay, we don't want to do this. Now that's one of the things we can tick off and we can go do something else. So we need more of that.
Well, and I love the phrase, there's no failing. You either win or you learn.
Right.
And how many times, going back to who were you talking about that? How many times they failed? Babe Ruth.
Yeah.
How many times did Thomas Edison fail?
Oh yeah.
And if he stopped, I wouldn't be able to see you right now.
That's right.
So I'm appreciative.
No, we'd have candles and we'd be talking with a string and the cans.
Right. In a very small audience because we wouldn't have technology either. Failure is such a necessary part of life, and stop being scared of failure. And anyone who makes you feel like you can't fail, get rid of those people. You don't need to hang out with those people. Those aren't good people.
Well, we all have those people in our lives.
Yes. And I didn't mean to say they're not good people.
No. And sometimes they are. They're good people.
That's what I meant. They're not good for that situation.
Right. It's if we all got along, it might be a little sucky.
Boring?
Yeah. It would be boring.
We need some conflict.
But we do. We need some conflict. We need a little bit of friction, but that's what makes it interesting, and that's what makes you want to do something. You know what I mean?
But if we could just dance it out instead of fighting it out.
Yeah, no.
Let's do the tango.
Yeah, we could have a dance-off or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's just gotten to such an extreme of, again, the polarized thinking. It's you can't be right because I'm right. Why can't we both be right?
If you've seen the meme where there's two guys standing in a parking lot, and they're one's on one side of a parking space and the other one's on the other end of the parking space, and they're facing each other. Now there is a number drawn in the parking space, and the one guy is saying it's a 6, and the other guy is saying no, it's a 9.
Yeah.
And they are both right, but they're arguing back and forth because of their perspective.
Such a true metaphor.
Yeah. So
it's true. What would we do if we weren't fighting?
We'd probably save the world.
We would play a lot of chess or
Yeah.
something. There'd be a lot of downtime.
We'd be watching more Black Mirror. So
That's true. That's
yeah.
true.
So anyway, so is there anything that you really want to make sure that the public knows about what you're doing and what's coming up, and any words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with, or anything that we can do to help you? Or
Well, obviously, it being such a local thing, you definitely can support by going to improvforlife.org. We have not set up our 501c3 to the point where we can accept donations or volunteers or anything. But honestly, the best thing that you can do is educate yourself on what improv is. It's not stand-up comedy. Night of the Improv screwed us on that,
Right.
because it's all stand-up comedians. And improv is not even whose line is it anyway. Improv is not joke telling or learning to be funny. Improv is the game. It's the team building exercises you do in your corporate retreats. It's it's the role playing that you do in drama to learn group flow, group
Right.
cohesiveness. And even if you are not someone who wants to do therapy, or even if you're someone who doesn't want to do improv, I would love to see people adopt the yes and philosophy for just one day. Be the yes man, and not unhealthy risks, obviously.
Right.
But something that scares you, go out and do it. Make yourself do it. And gosh, it's going to freak you out. It might make you fall over and cry. But the bigger the demon, the bigger the dragon, the more empowerment you get by defeating it. So you could help my my nonprofit by supporting the whole concept of what improv is, and all the principles. And please go to the website. I just put it up, so it's a template
Right.
that I've put in the words, but I haven't put in the curriculum. We're working on trademarks and things like that. But just get familiar with the idea, and you will naturally want to support it, because it's such an amazing tool. It's such an amazing tool at our hands, and people think it's so probably too easy. It's like, it's just good joke telling. That's too easy. I don't believe that.
And that's what gets me, is we want to make things more complicated than they are.
Welcome to being a human.
Yeah.
If dogs were running the world, it
Yeah.
would be so much easier.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know.
We
where
get
that
some
comes
kind
from.
of sick satisfaction out of making something more difficult than
Being
it is.
important. I know.
Yeah.
Well, have you ever tried to read Sartre or John Paul Sartre, and who's the other? Nietzsche? I tried, just for the sake of being smart. I picked up this book, and 2 paragraphs in, I thought, I have no idea what I'm reading, and it sounds like you just want to hear yourself talk.
Right.
Like I'm putting that thing away. So yeah, I don't know why we have to overcomplicate things.
Have you ever seen the movie What the Bleep Do We Know?
No. I like it though.
It's really it was a book, and they made it into a movie with Marlee Matlin, and it's basically about quantum physics, and it's really well done. I'll get you a copy. They've got these quantum physicists talking about quantum physics. And it starts out, and it's really interesting, and you realize, I've watched the movie like 8 or 10 times, and there's some awesome, beautiful concepts in there, and I always get to a certain point and I go, I am so lost
Right.
within my own head about what they're talking about. Holy crap. And what it comes down to is, well, yeah, that's the way it's supposed to be. Just take a step back. Here's what you understand. That's all you have to know.
Well, and maybe it's this, we had to, when we separated into we had to be the first country to get to the moon, and we had to be the first country to, do whatever. It's like, it's the race. We've become the human race.
You may be familiar with this, but I'm going to show you something. This is an arm wrestling thing, okay?
Uh-oh. Okay.
So now.
I'm sorry if I hurt you.
No, I'm prepared. So every time you win, you get a dime. Okay. Every time I win, I get a dime. Okay?
Okay.
You ready?
It's gonna be
Go.
hurt. Oh,
Now, why are you fighting me?
that's weird. Oh, why am I fighting you? I don't know. Am I
We
not
both
supposed to?
win. See?
Oh, who is giving us a dime?
Whoever's out there.
Oh, I do
But
like this. You're
but I'm
right.
saying,
You're right. Yeah,
every
you're
time
right.
you win, you get a dime. Every time I win. So if we work together, we can build that up, and we can both
we
get
could
rich.
Go play the slots.
Right,
I'm sorry,
but
keep it at
we
the
have
table.
to, as soon as it's competition, we got to fight that. I can't let you win.
Well, and competition is bred into us.
Yeah.
Days of the gladiators, like it's in our nature to
But
be competitive.
it is a good thing. It teaches team building, and
Yes.
it gives you a goal to work towards. You know, so I mean,
And advancement, healthy competition has been the fuel for advancement.
Exactly.
So
And I, you know, there are a number of people in town who do what we do here at the studio, and I love that because if there wasn't any competition, we wouldn't be trying harder to get better.
But this goes back to the don't compete with you, compete with yourself. And,
Right,
you know,
that's exactly right. And there are people who have come in here and I've said, hey, you know what, this wouldn't work for you, but here's a couple of places where you can go that it will work for you. And I've had a couple of people go, well, what's the matter, you don't like me? No, I like you. That's why I'm telling you, go over here because you'll have a better experience than you would here because I can't do what you want me to do, you know? And if you try to force me to, then we're both going to be pissed at each other.
See, and I appreciate that candor, but there are people who, they're
Yeah, I know.
sensitive and
Yeah.
they wouldn't.
But see, I learned that from Miracle on 34th Street.
Did you?
Yes.
I don't remember that part of that movie.
That's where Santa Claus told him to go over to Gimbel's.
Oh, that's right.
He's worked at Macy's, and no, we don't have it here, but they have it over there. You know, so that guy went out and he bought whatever it was over at the other store, but he remembered that experience. Hey, I'm going back there because I know I can count on them over there. So, you know, and that's what we want. That's what we try to do here. So, what else you got?
You wanted to talk about the band.
Actually, we can if you have the time.
I do.
Okay.
I
then
do.
let's do this. Let's wrap up this segment here.
Okay.
And then we will come back and we will talk about days gone by. So I'd like to thank you all for joining us again. We really appreciate you coming back and paying attention to what we say. I know your time's valuable. So I'm going to leave you with this message that I always leave you with. If you're going to do it with Stiles. Bye.
Nice work, John.